taken for this evening the subject, freedom lies beyond the mind. What is basic for us to understand is, we as a human being needs to learn to be with the mind first. And that is the first step in our life. So every child needs to have an idea, a concept to start with. We need to develop a mind through which we grow roots in this world. So there is a certain automatism working in us. It is not that we are coming and saying, okay, now I will start developing my mind and do something. It is part of the nature, part of our natural process, that we have the mind with its unique capacities, but also its limitations. And this is what we need to come in terms with. The mind is a very valuable instrument. It is deeply significant in our way of growing in this world. But the mind in the human situation is also a limited process. That we can understand it better when we see that in animal life, in other forms of life, they have their own kinds of mental process. And they are born, for example, when a dog is born as a dog, it is remaining a dog the whole life. It is in tune with the whole life. It is feeling harmonious and well, but it remains a dog. So it is a tiger, any other form of life. But in human being, we come into a very unique position. We are born with a potential, but this potential comes into its true fulfillment, true flowering, only when we also start seeing it, recognize the need to support this potential and take responsibility for it. And this is where the turning point in our life is. Many people think that, oh, why should human beings have so much problems? We come into so much difficulties. And then when we look at other forms of life, you see the animals and the birds and every other form. They are so much at ease, so harmonious, and so one almost starts envying them sometimes. Why can't we be like the birds and the bees and the flowers, just simply there? What is unique about the human being is that we have this option. We are given the chance to decide. And that is a great respect of nature, that we can open ourselves to receive and allow life, but we can also say no, we can also close up, we can also go around, we can also avoid. And that is what makes human life so challenging. If this possibility is not open, and if it is just like that with any other animal, then we have no freedom, then we have no chance, then it is just like part of evolution. But the evolutionary process brings us into a point where we have the capacity of consciousness, and then it is left to us. What do we make of our life? Do we try to understand ourselves? Do we try to look what is possible, what is not possible? Do we try to understand who we really are? That is where you can also see what we call the mind is a conditioned mind. Everybody, according to the different backgrounds we grow up with, has different likes and dislikes, different preferences, different ideas of what is good and bad, what is right and wrong, what is beautiful and ugly. And there are different fears, different calculations. So, when you can see that we have a conditioned mind which is connected with our particular background, and somebody else has a different conditioning, and from that point, when you look, you see it different. The same situation, the same reality, seen from different angles through different minds, there are different pictures, there are different ways of interpreting. And this is important for us to become aware of it, because that is when we see the need to go deeper, the need to go beyond. Otherwise, when somebody is growing up in a certain way and is not coming in touch with other perspectives, other interpretations, it appears to us that what we see, what we think, that is reality, that is truth. And if somebody says, hey, this is only one subjective perspective, this is not the truth, then we may almost feel irritated or angry or hurt, unless we start bringing our attention to encounter the nature of our reality and realize what is the truth behind all this. Because when we are calling something good, something bad, something right, something wrong, we are using certain standards. What is the reality when we are not comparing, when we are not idealizing, when we are not putting it in a frame? What is this experiencing of the reality when we simply are looking at it without the effort to categorize it in the conditioned way? Everybody knows it without often being conscious of it. We were all children. And when you look how children perceive, they are not yet conditioned like the grown-ups. And the child looks through the eyes of wonder. The child is perceiving everything, and there is no prejudices and pride coming in it. A child may be fascinated by a snake. Of course, it is dangerous, but for the child, it can go and play with it, because it is not yet conditioned to go in any particular way. Every child learns, and it is part of the responsibility to give the child certain orientation. The parents and the society gives it in different ways. But yet, one can see in the quality of the child there is wonder. In the quality of the child there is a deep aliveness. And this is what comes in the expression of Jesus when somebody asks him in one occasion, "Who among us can enter into the kingdom of God?" He points to a little child and says, those who again become like the child can enter into the kingdom of God. It's very poetically to be seen. It is not that there's some kingdom of God somewhere else, and that when we are becoming again childish and become helpless, then we can enter there. It is not in that way meant. Everybody is in the life process. Everybody is part of this wonder. But as we grow up, we get more and more bound to certain way of looking, certain way of categorizing, certain way of labeling. And that becomes a settlement in such a way that we don't question it. We don't often see that we are automatically going on in this labeling process. Not only that, we take it all for granted. That is why in relationships you can see it in one of the easiest way. When you are meeting someone, at first there is a fascination, the other is unknown, the other is new. But after a certain period, as you get familiar, you know a few things about the other, you can start labeling the other in certain ways, and by it becomes an automatism in us that we don't see the other really, how the other is in the moment, how the other really is. We start projecting through this conditioning in us, through this automatism in us. On one side, that kind of approach in the nature for the human mind is a practical way of functioning, because through the knowledge we collect, through the information and all the background which we bring together, it makes it capable that we can go more efficiently. It becomes a support for the survival. But for the human development, for a deeper way of connecting to each other, it is also a limitation. That is where the awareness has to come in. That is where we have to start seeing that we have this mechanism, and when we don't use it very carefully, instead of it's becoming a help, it can become a barrier to us. It can become a limiting factor to us. Because only when we are not trapped in this conditioning, we are able to allow the deeper sensibility in us, the deeper quality of love, the deeper quality of joy and fulfillment. And finally, the freedom. The freedom which is possible for a human being is incomparable. It is not only that we can move and do things in one way or the other, or we can be different than other animals through collecting knowledge. The freedom is that we can observe ourselves. We can observe our own conditioning. We can observe the whole program, what we carry in us, and through being able to observe it, not be caught in it. And this is the transcendence. This is what makes human being so unique, because the human being is capable to be deeply free, ultimately free. But it is a challenging process. It is not happening automatically. It is not happening by the side. It's not part of the evolution that we automatically come into this state of freedom and fulfillment, that we come into a deep quality of lovingness and realize it automatically. It is not happening like that. Through the natural developments, we gain chances, we gain situations where we get the glimpses of love. But the unconscious factors in us bring it in such a way also that it gets mixed up with other factors of our likings and disliking, our pride and prejudice, our tendency to hold to that what is pleasurable to us, wanting to avoid and get rid of that what is difficult and unpleasant to us. So it is a very delicate and deep responsibility what we are having to be able to allow this potential in us to be really lived. And that is what needs to be recognized by each individual. It's not enough that if you hear it from somebody and agree with it or disagree with it. That's not the point. Do you recognize it in yourself? Are you starting to question? Are you starting to confront your reality? Are you recognizing that there is a tremendous potential in you which can come into manifestation, which can be realized, which can be lived only through your initiative, through your own inner determination to allow it? This is the interesting aspect of it, that it is like a play. In the East, in India, they say about life that it is a leela. It means a cosmic play. It is not that anybody is behind us to make us do this or that. We are given the opportunities and it is left to us what we make of it. If we can only do the right thing, then we are not free. But if you can also do the wrong thing, then there is freedom. But there is also responsibility. And the responsibility is ours. We can not only do the right thing, we can also do the wrong thing. We can not only become loving and creative and be very intelligently going about life, we can also be very destructive. No other animal, no other creation in this life process can be so destructive as a human being can be. But on the other side, no other alive being can be so loving, so deeply fulfilled, so ultimately free like the human being. It's as if we are standing in the middle of the ladder and we can go down, create our hell, or we can create our paradise. Normally we think that the paradise is somewhere else and the hell is somewhere else and somebody else is responsible for it, and now we have to try to please someone else so that we don't come into hell and that we can get a good place in paradise. You see, in India, the mythological background is like that, that there are 3 gods responsible for the life process in the Hindu perspective. One is responsible for creation, that is Brahma. The second god is responsible for preservation, for the maintenance, that is Vishnu. And the third god is responsible for destruction, for death, and he is Shiva. But he is also called Mahadeva, the great god. because everybody is afraid of him. Nobody wants to come in trouble with him. For the first god, there is no temple except one temple in the whole India. He has done his work and now nobody is bothered. What can he do? He cannot do you much trouble. So there's not much. For the second god, there are quite some temples because he can do some favors for you and all that. But for Shiva, there are so many temples everywhere you find, because everybody is afraid not to come in trouble with him so that he leaves you in peace. But in reality, if we look, it is not that somebody else is responsible and we are just only helplessly caught in something. It is a great respect of life that everybody has the capacity. Everybody comes to this world with a tremendous potential, and it depends on us what we make of our life. If we go with the right openness to consider, if we are ready to look carefully, if we are ready to see how things are working and allow it to become an understanding, then we can see that life is supporting us tremendously. In the Sufi tradition, they have a saying that when we take one step to God, God takes 1,001 steps to us. It is not exaggeration, it is in fact putting it in a very mild way. We are supported in so many ways to be able to be in this life process. Each moment of our life, when we look very carefully, we can realize that it is all possible only because life has created in so many ways the basis for it. When we put a seed in the ground and we see that it becomes a plant, brings flowers and fruits, and if we don't look a little bit more carefully, we say, oh wow, I know how it works. Put the seed in the plant, seed in the ground, and it becomes a plant and we have the fruits. I'm so clever. But what we don't often consider is, it is possible like that because some great intelligence, one great caring, compassionate, creative process has created the background where the seed has this potential, where all these elements are working together. The more we become alert, the more we see that every aspect of this manifestation in life is so wondrous. We are able to sit here and feel so solid. Everything is so quiet and there is no disturbances. But when we look carefully, the earth is going on, moving all the time. It's going around the sun. But due to the gravitational force, due to the way it is all going so exactly, we are able to be here. We are able to live through the life process. When all the seasons are changing, we have now the autumn with its beautiful processes, all these colorful leaves. Autumn is reflecting one aspect of the life process. So as we bring our attention, we can see that everything in life is going with so minute detail, with so great accuracy. For example, if the sun would go a little bit away from our planet, and if it would change its course, or if the earth would go differently, the life process will not be possible here. It can become too cold or too hot, and everything can be disbalanced. But everything is moving in such a way that we can feel so well here, so comfortable here, we can count on it. So we start taking it for granted that it is all like that. It is only through bringing the attention we come to realize that nothing can be taken for granted. All kind of things are possible, but because life is supporting us in so many ways, we are able to grow through it. We are able to ripen through it. We are able to understand ourselves and life more deeply through it. It is valuable that we recognize this responsibility of ours. Otherwise, we are like children who play around, and that is fine, that is okay for a child. But if we remain childish and don't learn from what life is showing, if we don't allow the maturity to happen to us, then it is not the right understanding, it's not the right approach. It is said that someone asked a Zen master that you have been considered as an awakened person, and after your awakening, what do you wish? What is your desire? What are you wanting? He made a little serious face and said, I wish that after the autumn, the winter comes, and after the winter, the spring comes, and after the spring, the summer comes. And the man who asked the question considered for a moment and said, but that's how it's happening in the nature, in the way life is going here. Then the Zen master smiled and said, it is all going so perfectly. I wish that it goes the way it is going. Normally we think that life should be different, things should be different, and we are so much busy in trying to change the outside, believing that we understand it all rightly, it is the others who have to change, and we always look at the other. That's part of our automatism. But we become mature, we become capable to understand life deeply when we turn our attention to ourselves, when we start seeing what is our reality, who am I really? It is such a wakeful way of encountering oneself, what is making the difference. Otherwise, everybody has certain kind of conditioning, certain way of interpreting, and then one believes that the way one sees it, that is the reality, and naturally then it's coming in conflict with the others, and we imagine that the others don't understand it rightly. So, when does a real maturity happen? The maturity begins to happen in our life when we go beyond the mind, when we start seeing the limitation of the mind, but also see that we have a different way of perceiving the reality possible, and that is when we learn to look without going into the categorizing, into the labeling, into the automatism of the mind. That is why there is a statement of Jesus where he says, judge ye not. It is not only a strategy to just go in a more smooth way with the others. It may be looking like that, but it is much deeper. When you are not following the automatism of the judging, calculating and labeling mind, but observing it, then you start connecting more deeply. Then it is not that you have made a label and fixed the other end finished. On the contrary, you start looking more, start seeing, feeling other aspects. Then you are also coming in touch with the process which is taking place in you. And that is what makes the difference. When you are looking at yourself without calling it good or bad, when you are not fighting with yourself and saying that, oh, I'm like this, I should become that. Because very often we are also getting trapped in this idea that I'm not okay. Now I have to improve myself. I have to become better. And in certain misunderstood, misinterpreted way of going about religion, such thoughts have been hammered into people. For example, when it is said as if that you are not okay, you are born out of sin. That gives a person the feeling as if you are not okay. If you are born out of sin, then there is something wrong with me. But that is not meant in this way that you condemn yourself. And you have to also remember that all these words and terminologies, they go on also getting different connotations in the meaning as time passes and different people start using it in different ways. That's what you can see. Sometimes the same word is used in English in one way, but it sounds very similar in French, in Italian, in German, but they all have different associations, and sometimes it's very different in meaning. The Chinese mystic Lao Tse has been very, very careful about words and concepts, because he was very aware that the moment one puts an experience into a conceptual level, the person who hears that word is interpreting it and associating it with his or her past. The word is only an indication, and the word makes sense to you when you connect with your experience, with your background into it. So Lao Tse was saying the truth cannot be said. And it's a very interesting story from his life that he refused to write a book during the whole life. He didn't want to put it in words and concepts. And it is said that one day he was saying that now my time has come to leave this body, so I'm going to the mountains. So he wanted to go to the Himalayas and to the higher mountains and leave the body there. But the emperor from China was a great admirer of Lao Tse. When he heard about it, he sent to all the border people the message that Lao Tse should not be allowed to pass the border to go to the mountains unless he writes a book about his experience. Anyhow, this story is very interesting because Lao Tse begins his book then with this statement, the truth cannot be said, and that what is said is a lie. It is not that he was writing the book to tell some lies. And it is not that when somebody is trying to make something visible that the person is telling lies to you. But it's in the very nature of our mind and the reality of the words and concepts that it is only seeing one aspect. For example, now when we say it is night, we all can agree with it. it is dark, it is night. But it's not really true. In another part of the world, it is bright day. In a relative level, it is right. But as far as the deeper truth of it is concerned, it's not true. And even the idea of day and night, if you look more deeply, you will see that that is also not really like that. In the universe, there is no day and night. Only because the earth is moving around itself and revolving around the sun, we have these periods of direct sunlight and the shadow. So we have this experiencing of day and night. But when you go with a spaceship further in the space, there is no day, there is no night, there is one eternity. So as we bring our attention to the deeper aspects of our reality, the more it will become clear to us that this life is very, very precious, that all what we are, all what we have, what we take for granted, it should not be taken for granted, because everything is part of the wonder, part of the mystery. The more we become alert, the more it becomes clear to us how blessed we are, how precious this life is, and what responsibility we have. Because we can, through our careful way of going, make it beautiful, loving, creative for ourselves and for the others, and through our careless way of going, also make it very unloving, very destructive, very hard and painful for oneself and for the other. So it is these aspects which we are considering this evening. I am not here to tell you what to do and what not to do. I am here only to bring your attention so that it becomes visible to you how blessed we are. In our uniqueness, because each human being is different, with our differences in appearance, differences in the background. Everybody carries in their way a new face of the divine. In the Hasidic background, they have a saying, when God sends someone to the earth, he says in the ear, he whispers in the ear and says, "You are the best one I am sending." Because everyone is best, everyone is unique. It is only because we try to compare and standardize everything and say that when somebody is like this, then you are okay. When it is not like this, you are not okay. It is a human game. It's a human misunderstanding. Okay, when you want to play a game, you need to make some kind of standards and frame and rules. But the truth is that everybody is unique. How can you compare? How can you say that somebody is better and somebody is worse? Somebody is more beautiful and somebody is less beautiful? You will see the difference. For example, you ask a mother who has a child and the mother who loves the child very much. For the mother, this child is the most beautiful. There may be anybody else beautiful, but the connection with the child, the mother feels to the child is so deep that whatever be the appearance, the love gives a different experience of the other. And this is what you will also experience when you look without labeling, without prejudices, without bringing any knowledge between you and the other. You see that the other is unique, the other is beautiful in his or her innocent way. I would remind everybody to start with oneself, because only when you accept and respect yourself, you also become capable to look at the other without getting trapped in this comparison and labeling. That is why all those who have been looking more deeply into the nature of the reality has been reminding, know yourself, understand who you really are, or experience your truth. I want to leave it in this moment like this and take some space for questions, if there are any. So anything coming in you as a question or anything you want to say or express, feel free to bring it up. Yeah.
Actually, I'm new here and haven't heard you before, so thank you.
That's a very good basis.
And not to try and categorize what you're saying or anything, but would you consider yourself Advaita or non-dual? Is that something that fits into what you're saying, or I guess I'll just step it there and just ask for comments on that.
You see, the word Advaita simply means not two. Yeah. And this is an attempt to indicate the nature of the reality made by some of those who have been going deeper. And it's interesting because if you say it is one, it is still implying a two. So they want to make it so deeply near to the reality as possible by saying it is not two. It's not giving a positive statement which you can hold to and say, it is all one, because you can still make it into a mental concept. But when somebody is saying it is not two, then you have to still inquire. But as you can see, when people get into using the words Advaita, now what is Advaita? It's just reminding, hey, it's not dualistic, because we are used to seeing I, you, the other, and so look deeper. It's an invitation to look more into the reality, invitation to look as to who you are, what you are. And that is what is making the difference. It is not collecting more concepts, it's not trying to make a knowledge of it. It is recognizing the limitation of holding to knowledge, and recognizing also the need for direct experiencing. The interesting thing is, we are capable to experience the reality directly as our attention turns to ourselves and see how things are working in us. Otherwise, we are identified with one thought or another thought, one concept or another concept. But when you start looking at that what is working in you, you are connecting to the wholeness of the situation, wholeness of that what is taking place in you. And that becomes the basis also to expand the attention, expand your consciousness, and see that it is an interconnected reality. And that what you are, that is also the nature of the reality of the other. The other is also, you look at anybody, everybody is in their way trying to be happy, everybody wants to be fulfilled, everybody wants to be loved, everybody wants to be joyous, everybody wants to be free. So the more you can have the distance to yourself by becoming aware, the more you are also able to realize that it is not that we have to change the other and make the other fit with our concept or ideal. We have to understand ourselves and the nature of the reality more deeply, and through that be open for that what we find is loving, that what we find life is wanting to manifest through us. So in this sense, you can call it an orientation to Advaita, orientation to religiousness, orientation to truth, but I would prefer not to again put it into new labels, although it is sometimes necessary to categorize, because when you go into some official kind of places, you have to say, I am so and so. Then you have to say what your name is, where you are born, what kind of profession you are doing, and that is part of a certain identity. But if you look more carefully, the name you can change. This is not your name in an absolute sense. That's why in the mystical circles, when people come to deeper inquiry, it is often a process connected with certain initiation, and there one of the first things often is a new name is given. It is not because the new name is in itself better than another name and that the new name is the right thing. The new name is simply enabling the person to disidentify from the old identification, and also makes it conscious that you are not just this name. The name can be changed. Then it can become an orientation, it can become a reminder. And so it is also, we have to be born somewhere. Everybody has to be born somewhere. So sometimes you are born here, sometimes you are born there. But that is not our absolute reality. Now you can also see that somebody has been born in another country and they get adopted and they come into a different family, different background, and then they are identifying with that. So these are not the absolute things. And so it is when we look very carefully at the nature of the reality, that it is not these labels, it is not this what we are used to fixing and holding to as reality, which is the truth. It is something which we need to approach in a non-struggling way, by bringing the attention to see what is taking place in me. When we see the judgment taking place automatically in us, the fears which are coming, the agreement and the disagreement. Also, for example, when we are here now, you are listening to somebody who is speaking. The way you listen changes also the quality of the experiencing. When you are listening, being in touch with what way it is taking place in you when you listen. When something is fitting with your idea and you are agreeing, or when something does not fit with how you think about it, then the disagreement. When you are just noticing all these things, or if some fears are touched, some uncertainty is brought up, noticing all this, you move deeper into yourself. You become more rooted in the pure consciousness, and from the pure consciousness you are experiencing the reality differently. That is what is the orientation, that you experience it, and out of your experiencing allow developments to take place. Yeah.
It's an honor to hear you, listen to you. I was just wondering, this question might be a little bit, I don't know if it's relevant, but what do you think of the human condition in general? How do you think the human race is going? What direction do you think it's headed, generally?
we are in a very decisive period of our life process on this earth. Through the developments, we are in a position to see that we cannot just go blindly in the same way as we have been going, that we have a responsibility. And it is not easy to take this responsibility because it means encountering oneself, it means not trying to prove that I am superior to you and that somebody else is worse than you and go into this power approach, because the power approach is the most comfortable way when you can say, oh, you do this, you do that, and I am this. Then you can manage. But when you want to allow everybody to rise to their reality, to awaken to their truth and recognize their beauty and divinity, then everybody needs to be supported to go beyond the fears, to go beyond this competition. That is why we are in a point where the life process on this earth can only go on in a healthy way when we recognize the limitation of the approach of power, which is connected with creating fear and punishing and controlling, into a way of connecting sympathetically, compassionately, connecting through the heart, accepting and respecting each other, and supporting each other through that, also to understand, to awaken. It is not something where we are able to change the other and make the other do what we want. That is not the emphasis. It is more that we start seeing our part, take the responsibility, and then make it available to anybody who also is ready to look, ready to see. And life is bringing through these challenges, through this very difficult situation sometimes, that everybody is reconsidering. But again, you can see that when difficulties are there, when challenges are there, when it is uncomfortable, we have many ways to deal with it. Either, like most times we are used to in the regular way of going, we try to change the symptoms. We deal with it on a symptomatic level so that we don't go really into the root of the situation and clear it. We just manage peripherally. It looks like a solution because we are able to function for a little while, and for the outside it looks like I have everything under control, but it is not a solution. It is only postponing, and it is making it more difficult, more problematic, because the more we push it down, the more difficult it becomes to clear it. And the other ways are also connected with this tendency to avoid the encounter with it. We go into drugs, we go into alcohol, we go into other kind of things which gives us a kick so that we don't have to be with the so-called problem. It is human, we can sympathetically understand these aspects, but then comes the question, can we go on avoiding and just go around the situation that it becomes a clearance in itself? No. This responsibility to recognize it and to see that it is an invitation of life, that we have these so-called difficulties, because what is a difficulty? It means we are reminded, invited to look at the situation again, to reconsider the situation. And in every situation, when you look, you can see that it contains both the possibilities. You can go very carelessly, go on in the usual way and let it become a destructive process, or you can look what is possible. How can I go as carefully, as creatively, and respond to it? And in that way of considering it, it becomes a creative development. Now, for example, there are movements all over the world. There are crises taking place on economical level, political level, and personal levels. There's many people who are suffering from depression, psychological problems, become disoriented, and some get into self-destructive processes. Now, we can get disheartened by it and feel that, oh, it's all too much. What can I do? I'm poor, helpless. Or we can say, hey, I need to understand who I am. What is my reality? And what is the possibility in me? What is my potential? When we don't resignate, when we don't believe that the way our mind is interpreting it is the truth, but question the mind, that is what also our topic for today is trying to remind, that the freedom is in going beyond the mind. When you see that the negative reactions which we come into is part of the same conditioned mind, then you can see that you need to look at it more deeply. You need to confront it more carefully. And that is where you will be surprised to see that when you don't follow this automatism which is pulling you into negative reactions, and you stay with it long enough, you see that it is opening new perspectives, new possibilities, new connections. And this is a creative process. It is not something where you are punished. If you don't understand it rightly, we can feel, oh, now life is punishing me, or God is punishing me, and so God is punishing this people or that people. It's not like that. There is no God who wants to punish and create hell for anybody. That is not the right understanding. Life gives us an opportunity, but also is very deeply respectful that we can make the right decisions, the right steps, but we can also be going carelessly. We can also resignate. And to resignate, to go carelessly, looks more easy, but that's not an answer that will not fulfill us. And we will feel that that is not the right thing. But there is a temptation to hold to the ego, to hold to the habits, to hold to the pride and prejudice, to hold to the approach of power. Because when you feel, I'm strong, there's a childish excitement about it, to feel superior to somebody. But when you really look more carefully, that is not a healthy process. When you want to be superior to somebody, how can you really love? And when you love somebody really, do you want to be superior to somebody? No. When you really allow love, then you are not interested in playing the power game. But these are things which will become conscious to us only when we are also encountering these aspects. So life is coming to a very intense and decisive point, and it's depending on each of us in unique ways what we make out of it. And it is just like many drops of water create the river. It is the individuals who are contributing to the developments also in the world. And we can only start with ourselves. And there we can be sure that when we take care from our side, we go into facing ourselves as honestly, as courageously as possible, life is supporting us. And when you take this initiative, you will not regret it, because you see that through that you are coming into more clarity, or through that you are getting inwardly more free, through that you are able to live more intensely. So when you decide to take care and go carefully in life, you will not regret it. You will regret only those approaches where we are going carelessly, where we are just allowing the automatism to overtake us and drown us into blind reactions. That we will regret, because we were so close to the possibility to be loving, to be joyous, to be free. Be alert of this aspect, that it is not something to be resignated about. It is not something to believe that now it is going into something destructive. It is in many, many ways reminding us that we have a possibility, we have the responsibility, we have a chance, individually and globally. Yeah.
How do you feel the nonviolent peace movements, the Occupy, the frustration that people are expressing, and they're not, it can turn into violence, but for the most part, they're not expressing it that way. How do you feel that fits in with what you're saying about going into yourself?
You see, the non-violence is a very valuable orientation, in the sense that we have been used to an approach of struggling with ourselves and with the others, and that is coming automatically. We don't need to do something for that. When we want that there is a real healthy development in ourselves and in the world, then we have to become aware of this aspect, that it is not in becoming violent, it is not in going into destructive processes that we can make anything beautiful. We have to take care that we don't harbor hatred and anger and justify our negativity through this or that. We have to encounter it, we have to see that we are sowing the seeds when we are going in one way or the other. So according to what we sow, it will come into fruition. We have to reap those seeds. It is understandable that many human beings are reacting the way they are, knowing the way they are in their situation capable or understanding. So we are not here to judge anybody and to put labels about it also. But those who can understand, they will have to see that we have to start with ourselves, and we have to do whatever we are doing in a spirit of compassion and love. That is why it is not just the outer doing itself what is to be labeled and judged. It's much more from where your doing is arising. Whatever you are doing or not doing, from which basis it is arising, that is the decisive point. Somebody may do the so-called right thing, but if they are coming from a wrong basis, from some calculation, some manipulative thing, and they are caught in their misunderstanding about themselves and the reality, then it won't be such a difference in their life when they do a so-called good thing, because behind that it is the same calculation, the same tendencies which are working. But when they can see that it is necessary to go deeper into oneself and allow clarity to arise, and out of this clarity to let that what is as a loving and creative orientation to manifest, then we go in the right direction. That is why it is said to bring awareness in life. So it is not only just doing the so-called right thing, but we are also present and seeing what is happening in us, from where we are going into it. Then through our doing, and also sometimes through our mistakes, we learn, we ripen. And life gives us enough room also to make mistakes. It is not that we have to be from the very beginning correct and perfect and absolutely right. We are in a process of discovering, we are in a process of learning and growing, ripening. So we have to be a friend to ourselves, and with this quality of friendship, we have to approach the challenges of the world. That's why often I have been reminding to the friends who are coming for deeper inquiries that take the 3 C's as orientation: consciousness, compassion, and creativity. Just some little bridges. When you say 3 C's, then you can remind yourself in this way. One has to see that it's a playful process which has to be pursued wholeheartedly without making it into a struggle. Is any other question or anything else to say or to express in anyone?
When you say if you're coming from the right basis, and then your activities are somehow have a rightness to them, and in a way, could there be a risk that plants a seed that I'm not sure if I'm in the right basis, so then I better wait, I better not act, I better not have compassion, because maybe this compassion is false, or and do we need to have that halting impetus to be cautious?
Yes, this last word is very important. Cautiousness is the orientation. Cautiousness means we don't go blindly into doing something, and we don't go blindly also into not doing something. It is not that, oh, now I am not perfect, so I don't do anything and resignate. That is not the right understanding. When we orient to a conscious way of going, when we orient to a compassionate way of going, when we orient to creativity, and stay present in this process. That's why I put consciousness as the first thing. When you go consciously and be loving, be compassionate, be sympathetic to yourself and to the other, and orient to creativity as a direction. then you see what is happening in you, what is possible, what is required. It's a learning process, and it's not just some words which you are following from somebody and going from the head into it. It is requiring you to be with your heart. It is requiring you to be present to the now, and that is what makes the difference. So when you understand it rightly, then you will see it is an invitation to go as wakefully and to respond to life rather than just mechanically doing something or mechanically resignating and giving up, because both are mechanical. Both are just going without considering, without looking. That is what the challenge is.
Could you say anything about meditation and what we're striving for through meditation, or what we're trying to do, and maybe any connection that has with the freedom you're talking about? Thanks.
Interestingly, this word meditation comes from the Sanskrit expression dhyan, and literally the word dhyan means attentiveness. Attentiveness is what the orientation is. Attentiveness without getting trapped in the automatism. Attentiveness without going into the blind projections through the mind. That is why you must have heard, when you have been coming in touch with teachings about meditation, the mirror-like consciousness, expressions like that, or being like a witness. In Sanskrit, they use the word sakshi bhav. Just like a witness who is not taking any side, who is not for something or against something. That is a conscious objectivity. Or simply in a non-interfering way being with the reality, as J. Krishnamurti has been putting it. Non-interfering presence. These are all different indications for a meditative understanding, for a meditative way of connecting to the reality. When you practice it, then only you can see what is happening through it, what is meant through it, what is the significance of it. When you are looking at yourself without calling it good or bad, right or wrong, then you start seeing that you are what you are. You have been having different background, different conditionings, and you are in your way trying to come in terms with life. So when you look at yourself without the usual judgments, then you can be a friend to yourself. And in this friendly way of being with yourself and the reality, you start experiencing that life is a blessing. Life is wondrous. Life is not a curse. You are not punished to be here. And when you understand it rightly, you see it is a tremendous opportunity which is given in this chance to be in a human body. But it is very easily possible for us to misunderstand it. It's very easily possible for us to oversee it and get engaged and entrapped in certain conditioned way of looking and reacting. So there are all these dangers of misunderstanding, misinterpreting, getting trapped in habitual reactions. But meditativeness as an orientation and bringing it into practice becomes a very valuable basis. Without bringing deliberately this initiative, the automatism is overtaking our whole energy. If you say that I will take at least an hour a day to allow a meditative process, be with what is, without trying to be good or bad, without trying to be superior or anybody inferior, without trying to hold to any role, any goal. This is creating a conscious space for you to be in touch with your heart, in touch with your wholeness of the reality, and it's a sign from you to become available to life. Without this deliberate and a certain kind of disciplined way of confronting yourself, the automatism says, oh yeah, I have to do this, I have to do that, that's more important, that's very urgent, and one gets pulled into all kind of things and one doesn't find really the space. And for the calculative mind, what is this sitting quietly doing nothing? You are wasting your time. What are you doing? But when you understand it rightly, this is a very rich, very significant foundation to allow a healthy way of going about life. So, going beyond the mind is a meditative process. Going beyond the mind is that what happens when we are allowing love. Going beyond the mind is also a way of creating the framework for trusting life. And these are very basic factors. That is why I remind that take time for meditation. And even if it is sometimes very difficult, even if everything looks like, oh, it's so cold and sitting now, naturally it is cold, naturally it is uncomfortable sometimes, but certain things in life, try to stay with it as decisively, as committedly. And you will be surprised. When once you have taken the step, then it is no problem. It's only the mind coming and creating a little cloud. When you are saying, okay, now this, I'm not going to listen to the fluctuations of the mind, whatever, comfortable, uncomfortable, I'm going to be with it. Then afterwards there's no problem. Only when you still have this chance to say, ah, no, and put the blanket a little more. It is human. It is not something where you have to feel guilty or to punish yourself or anything, and that is not the sense of it. But you have to see that you have to gently persuade yourself, not fight with yourself, not to make it a hard trip, but to see that without your initiative, without your determination, the automatism is pulling the energy into the habitual structures, into the habitual patterns. And that is a big challenge for the human being. It is as if you are connected to a robot, to a certain computer program, and all the energy which is coming to you is going into it, and you are just being pulled and pushed by this computer program. And your chance is that you can stay present so that you don't let the energy flow into this, and that is how you can disconnect, disentangle, and become free. It's a bit like Stanley Kubrick's film 2001, The Space Odyssey, where the man has to outwit the computer to survive. It's bringing that aspect into visibility, and that is what we have to very carefully bring in our life, that we see that there is a challenge, there is a danger, and without going into it in a fighting way, we need to bring a quality of awareness, deepen our insight, and that makes the difference. That is why those who are bringing alertness in life, they see that even though sometimes one forgets and goes into all kind of things, how much valuable it is, how much helpful it is. So bring this orientation as carefully, and bring this discipline also in a friendly way to yourself. Yeah.
There are different kinds of meditation. In this time, there are different kind of meditation, just like political party. Some people say I am Rajneesh meditation, some people say I am Lord Buddha meditation, some people say I am Shiva meditation, somebody say I am Buddha meditation. So I want to know what is the difference between this meditation, so different kind of meditation. Because some meditation, people sitting silent, and some meditation people crying, different kind activity. So I want to know what is the difference between this and that different kind of meditation.
There can be various meditative orientations possible. It depends on the understanding behind it and how the structure of the meditation is made. Is it made in such a way that it is helping the human being to attain a quality of intensity of awareness and turn the attention to oneself? Is it coming from a background where there is a real insight into the nature of the reality? So you have to practice it and see what is valuable for you. Meditative process can be starting from various angles, and one can begin with various approaches. But finally, when somebody is going deeper into the meditative process, it has to do with learning to be with the reality without identifying blindly with one aspect or another aspect of the personality or the mind. So it depends also on who is teaching these meditations, from where these meditative practices are coming. If it is a person who is using them very carefully, then certain techniques can be used for a certain period as a help, and to gain intensity, to gain clarity at a certain level, and then one has to leave it behind and go further. So it is not the technique in itself, it is what understanding is behind it, what is very decisive. There can be active exercises which can be creating a basis for meditative space. Also many exercises which are being done here, they are also approaching from different directions, and there are various meditative processes. For example, what Buddha has been giving, the breath awareness, is a very valuable method, and there are various yoga practices which has been working to allow this meditative orientation to deepen. So it is the insight and the understanding in those who are teaching it and those who are behind it what is also very important. If one is just going into the meditative process as if it is just a thing to feel a little bit relaxed and a little bit better, and not allow the spaces of silence, allow the spaces to be with a quality of witnessing, then it will not go very much deep. Then they will be just doing certain things and continuing in the old structures of the mind and the reaction patterns further on. So the emphasis has to be in your practicing and seeing what helps you. With the same methods, somebody may be able to benefit and go deeper, but for somebody certain methods are not feeling relevant, then they can also attempt to work with other methods. So it is a question of realizing it is not the method, it is primarily the intention in the person himself or herself. What is the decisive factor? And then you can use the methods, work with it, and see what is possible, what is not possible. But one can say in this way, when your meditation is going deeper, and if it helps you to be compassionate to each other, if it helps you to be more patient, if it helps you to be more silent inside, if it helps you to celebrate and enjoy life more deeply, then your meditation is going in the right direction. Yeah.
With all the publicity or propaganda or whatever information that's gone out with the 2012 because of the Mayan calendar and all these incredible changes that they're talking about that's supposed to be coming, can you give us a little bit of your insight about that and how you see that?
From a common sense way of looking, you can see that if we go on repeating certain patterns of reacting which we find are not helpful and creative blindly further, it cannot go on, it cannot bring the fruits. So in different ways it can be brought into visibility. The crisis, the challenges which are in the world now are showing that there is a different conscious approach which is needed, which is decisive, and that is an individual process. It is not that we are able to change somebody else and thereby bring about a healthy development. The individuals are the basis of this world. Just like a forest is made of many trees, but these are the individual trees which are consisting in making the forest. In the same way, the world and its development are decided by the individual steps. And that is what is necessary to recognize. It can be indicated from different angles. The Mayan calendar is indicating a possibility, and it is very valuable that those who are coming in touch with are considering it. There is one of those brochures which Jeffrey and Mona has been also publishing here, containing an article about the high noon of the humanity, which is bringing this aspect also into attention. But it is not just to discuss and to worry and to go into some kind of anxiety thing. It is simply a reminder that, hey, there is a chance, there is an opportunity, there is something tremendously possible, and it is our part. We are having something to contribute, we are having the chance to participate in a decisive process. So if we take it in that spirit, then we will see that it is a very potential period, and if we don't go into a kind of resignated non-participating approach, then we can see that it is an invitation for life. It's an invitation for creative potential. It's an invitation to live the love. So we have so much for this evening. We have the next days also some possibilities to be with different topics and also with questions which are arising. So that's for today.